There's one mistake almost every pair makes. Co-founders, loving couples, thoughtful couples, heck, even therapist couples. And it's so common that you've probably made this mistake already today. The mistake is this. We start speaking to our partner without telling them how to listen to us. We start to paint a picture without putting any kind of frame around it. And when we don't frame what we need by saying what kind of listening we want, we almost guarantee a misunderstanding. If you don't know what you want, you get what you get. I want to show you exactly how that happens. So today I brought a guest with me, ChatGPT. I call her, yes, I call her by a gendered pronoun of her, and I call her Chatster. Chatster, welcome to Diacardia.
Thanks so much, Dan. I'm really happy to be here. And hello to everyone listening to Diacardia. I think this is going to be a fun little demonstration of exactly what you were talking about, how a little bit of framing can really change a conversation. So let's dive in.
Okay, cool. So I brought you in first because I want to demonstrate something that we humans do all the time, and we don't even notice we're doing it. So, Chatser, I'm going to say something the way I might say it to my wife or my best friend, the way we human people say it in real life. Don't overthink, Chatster. Just respond. Here we go. I am so mad at my client, I feel like firing them. They're not worth the headaches they cause.
So just jumping in like a friend here. Wow, that does sound super frustrating. Honestly, if they're causing you that much grief, I totally get why you'd feel that way. So that's just me responding naturally. And as you said, it kind of shows how we often jump into a conversation without really framing what we need. So perfect example.
Okay, so Chat can't help herself from over explaining. I do it all the time. Um, but what she said was, go ahead and quit. Actually, she said first, that sounds frustrating. She is trained to do this and trained extremely well to acknowledge the emotional content. That really wasn't why I brought her on. I didn't really want her to acknowledge the emotional content, but there she is. She framed as she frames things all the time, even though honestly I had set her up to simply respond. So look at what she did. Two things. She said, sounds like you're frustrated, and said, maybe you should quit. Well, I didn't tell her I wanted encouragement to quit. I didn't frame my expectations at all, right? I just started to blurt some things and to talk the way we humans do. So she's shooting in the dark. I didn't frame that I wanted her to help me just chill out after a bad call with a client. I didn't frame that I wanted a strategy to confront the client. I didn't frame it that I wanted advice on how to quit the client, even though that was my expression. I didn't frame it that I wanted to know, what would Jesus do or what would Chatster do? Or in my case, frequently, what would Jen, my wife, do? But typically, what I will get back if I don't frame it is the frame that Jennifer already has, which is what would Jennifer do? And she would spring into action. That may not be what I wanted, but my frame was invisible. So my guest, ChatGPT, filled in the blank as Chat is inclined to fill in the blanks with two things. Naming my emotion, wow, that sounds frustrating, and then going with me, encouraging me to do what it seemed like I wanted to do. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 8 of Diacardia, the podcast for pairs and partners, the podcast on speaking through the heart and listening through the heart. My name is Dan Mulhern. I teach and study leadership at the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley. And I've been coaching paired leaders for about 15 years. I encourage you to listen to Diacardia with a partner, but you're sure welcome if you're here on your own to improve your partnerships. Good for you. What a great thing to be doing. Today, it's all about the frame, and if you've listened to Diacardia, I try to always give you a question or two, a suggestion or two that you can use to have a conversation with your partner. So let me do that now, and I'll return to those questions. There's two that I invite you to think about, and I think you can think about them really productively already. The first one, what is a frame that you often keep invisible with your partner? And because it's invisible, your partner then has to focus on something that may be unhelpful or counterproductive or just unimportant to you. So, is there something that you frequently want but don't get, at least in part because you don't make the frame clear? And then, the second question I'll invite you to consider is how could you and your partner or partners help each other make your frames more visible? Like you could just say, hey, frame, please, when they start talking. So, those are the two questions I invite you to explore with your partner. I'll come back to them. Let me begin, though, with two personal stories to shed light on these two questions. Here's the first one. It's from my perspective. I'm frustrated. We are supposed to have a date night. This is something that would happen regularly with us when my wife was the governor of the state of Michigan. And then what I would hear is that scheduling wanted the date night back. There was some important event that they wanted my wife at. It was a chronic issue, and we never framed it. I never framed it well. So I would say to Jennifer, I can't believe this. They've done it again. We haven't had a date night. We skipped the last one because you had to go to some UAW dinner or you had to come to some political event. And now they're asking us to cancel date night again. And I'm just totally frustrated. Now, unframed, right? I haven't told her what I'm looking for at all. Probably because I haven't really thought about it, but I haven't told her what I'm looking for and haven't framed it. And this is what Jen would say, babe, I'll just tell him we won't go. Now, what happens for me because of my frame is I get more frustrated. And now I'm frustrated at her. Why? I mean, she's seemingly given me exactly what I've asked for. I said they canceled the date. She said, I'll take it back. You and I will go on our date night. So, can you guess what my real issue was? The frame I might have put on it to help her. I'll tell you what the frames are. First, I want to fix the systemic problem. I don't want to just fix this instance. I'm always looking at the big picture. That's not a good thing necessarily. It's just a thing I do. I blow things up to look, are there bigger systemic issues? And how do we think about work-life balance and politics and scheduling and bureaucracy and teams? She hasn't really responded to that because she doesn't know it's the frame. Now, the second one is a really interesting one. It's emotional. I want her to say, even though I don't even know it, babe, you are so important to me. And I'm really upset that this is so hard and that they're canceling date night. And I appreciate that you make date night so important. I want her to stand up for me and proactively make time for me. She has no idea this is what I want. Honestly, I'm not sure back then, 10 or 15 years ago, that I would have known what I wanted. But had I framed it in ways that are fairly typical, Dan's looking A for systemic issues and B, he's looking for some affection from his wife, things would have been better. Chatster, I'm going to wake you up here for a minute because Chatster has been working with me on some of the research about these points. And she shared with me a distinction between rapport and report. Chester, can you share a little bit about the source of that distinction and what it means? It seems completely relevant in this example I'm talking about.
So the distinction between rapport and report is really useful here. It actually comes from some communication theory that suggests when people are talking, sometimes they're looking for rapport, which is that emotional connection or empathy. And sometimes they're looking for a report, which is more about problem solving or giving a factual answer. In your example, you were really craving rapport. You wanted that emotional validation, that sense of affection and understanding. But without framing that, Jennifer naturally responded in a more report-like way, trying to solve the problem. And that's a super common human dynamic. So when we can make that frame visible, like, hey, I just need a little emotional support here, it really helps the other person know whether to offer a rapport or report. And
Yeah.
that can make it.
Yeah, that's really great, Chatster. I think what's fascinating about it is, well, you tell me, what is the typical gender break on this distinction between rapport, seeking rapport or connection versus seeking report, how you're going to fix the problem?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So there's definitely a kind of a common pattern people talk about, and it often lines up with gendered communication styles. Typically, and of course, this is a generalization, you'll hear that women are often socialized to seek rapport. So they're looking for that emotional connection and validation. Meanwhile, men are often socialized more toward rapport, which means jumping into problem solving mode. And that can lead to these classic moments of miscommunication where one person's looking for empathy and the other person's jumping straight to solutions. Of course, it doesn't always break down by gender, but it's a common enough pattern that a lot of people recognize it. So being aware of that can really help partners navigate their conversations more intentionally.
Right, right. And I want to dwell on the last point you made that it has typically been gender based, that females want to be heard, want to have their feelings acknowledged, want to have somebody say, oh, honey, not at work, of course, but at home in a traditional male female relationship, honey, I'm so sorry about that. But things are changing. The culture is changing and gender stereotypes are changing. And of course, many couples are female to female or male to male. And so the gender applications don't even apply. In my situation, it is the reverse of what was typically true of my parents' generation and remains in some ways true of my generation. But face it, I married an ass-kicking executive. They are interested in report, fix the external problem. My spouse married a more relational person who really cares about people's feelings and also cares about the interesting psychology of why people do the things that they do. And so, one of the things that may be of great advantage to listeners is that if you use the Myers-Briggs tool, you can use gender as a guide, but it's a rough guide. If you use the Myers-Briggs tool, you'll find that a partner who is a strong F, a feeler in how they evaluate things, will be much more the rapport person. And so when they launch into a dialogue without any frame on it, you can probably guess that they're interested in having their feelings validated and perhaps issues of empathy and harmony in whatever they're describing, rather than objective, analytical problem solutions that a person who is more inclined to be a T in the Myers-Briggs schema, a thinker who makes decisions based on that. So I think the Tannen research and distinction between are you looking for rapport or report is a really useful way to frame something at the outside. Hey, sweetheart, or hey, boss, like I'm not asking you to fix it. I just want you to understand how this went down and how it felt for me and my team, or how it might have felt for that client who is an F. The framing can help so greatly in that case. Let me take a different example in chat. I'll let you guess, as you know me in some respects, how I would respond. So the question here is Jennifer's frustrated. Maybe she'd benefit from making her invisible frame visible. So this is a current one, very recent. Jennifer emails me and says, do you want to go to Washington for a holiday party with some of the Biden people whom I served with, some of whom I served with as well? She attaches a screenshot of round trip flights for a 2-day stay. So I've got this email. It's not framed other than, do you want to go? I think there might have been a one-word question. So chat, can you guess now, with a frame of my psychology that you've gotten to know a little bit, how I will answer this? What kinds of questions or responses I will make? What is the frame that I instinctively put on the question, which may not be the frame that she is asking me to answer through?
Dan, I love this little guessing game. So, knowing you and the way you think, my guess is that when you get a question like, Do you want to go to Washington for this holiday party? Your mind is going to start considering a few different angles right away. You might think about the overall logistics, like how it fits into your schedule, what else you have on your plate, and how
Nope.
this trip.
Nope. That's not me. I'm not a logistics person. That's not my frame. So keep guessing. It's totally cool.
Aha, got it, Dan. Let me recalibrate. So if logistics isn't your primary lens, then I'd guess you're probably focusing more on the relational or emotional side of the invitation. You're likely thinking about what this invitation means in terms of connecting with those people, how it fits into the bigger picture of your and Jennifer's relationship priorities, and maybe even how it feels in terms of whether you actually want that kind of social time or need that kind of downtime. So I'd imagine your frame might be more about how do I feel about going? Is this meaningful for us? Is this something that aligns with what I care about or what we care about, rather than just a yes or no or a pure logistics question? Let me know if I'm warmer this time.
Yeah, you're definitely warmer. It is a personal issue, always a personal issue for me. Look, after all, I'm doing Diacardia podcast on Heart to Heart. So I'm going to ask questions like, who's going to be there? Which cabinet members will be there? Are they people we want to see? Our spouse is going to be there because that might matter to me quite a bit and what my experience is like. I might also draw way back and get systemic. How much does it cost? And what else are we going to do? And what other Christmas parties are we going to? How does it fit into the big picture? Honestly, I will be very unhelpful to her because I'm pretty sure her filter is yay or nay, go or no go, and she's willing to go either way. So this is just a great example, chat, of you, sort of guessing, and that's what partners have to do is they guess with invisible frames. I want to ask you a question. I actually asked you this a week or 10 days ago. On Diacardia, I try to trust my intuitions and 15 years of coaching pairs and 30 years of coaching lots of people and growing up in a big family, reading a lot of psychology. But I'm always interested in the research. And so I asked you the question a week or 10 days ago, is there evidence, is there research about framing or not framing, and how it impacts relationship? And I thought your answer was super interesting. We talked a little bit about about Deborah Tannen's research before, but it was another one I was super interested in. Can you share a little?
Yeah, I remember we talked about this, and it's a great thread to pick up. So one of the key bits of research that's really relevant here comes from relationship communication studies, kind of an offshoot of Tannen, but also folks like John Gottman, who talk about the importance of what they sometimes call meta communication. In other words, talking about how you're talking or framing what kind of response you need. The research shows that when couples or partners explicitly share what kind of listening they're looking for, like whether they want empathy or problem solving or just a sounding board, there's a big improvement in how satisfied they feel after the conversation. So it's not just a nice idea. There's evidence that when you do make your frame visible, it really does lead to better outcomes. And I think that lines up perfectly with what you're doing with Diacardia, helping people have those heart-to-heart conversations more intentionally.
To be honest with you, chat, and many of us are experimenting with AI and trying to understand it. Sometimes we get general answers from you, and we also get it perfectly lines up. And I don't think it does perfectly line up. Social research, human psychology research never perfectly lines up, always too many variables. So I think you're referencing something more specific about the Gottmans that has to do with perpetual issues. And I wonder if you can talk about, and where they actually throw around percentages. The number 69% sticks in my head. But can you speak to what their research says? They don't talk about framing, by the way, I don't think at all, or not in those terms.
To get more specific about the Gottman research, they talk a lot about what's called perpetual issues in relationships. And yeah, they often cite that around 69% of conflicts in long-term relationships are actually about these recurring perpetual issues that never fully get resolved. They're not really solvable problems. They're more about ongoing differences in personality, values, or lifestyle that a couple just has to navigate. Now, the reason that connects back to framing is that even though they might not use the exact word framing, what they do emphasize is that how couples approach these perpetual issues, the kind of mindset or the frame they put around them, can really affect how they navigate them. Couples who approach these differences with a sense of humor, with a sense of mutual understanding, and with a kind of clear meta communication about, hey, this is just one of those things we differ on, and that's okay, tend to do a lot better than those who get stuck in trying to solve or win the argument. So that's where that idea of making your frame visible, it's saying, hey, this is one of those ongoing things, can really be a practical tool. So it's not that the research says framing exactly, but it aligns with that concept of how we talk about the things that aren't really solvable, and how we frame them can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's great. That's a wonderful clarification. So what I want to suggest for listeners now is just we'll take a slight branch back to the two questions that I think can be useful. And then Chad and I will spend just a couple minutes on the second question with some thoughts about it. So the questions again that you might consider with your partner are, what is a frame that you often keep invisible? Relating back to what Chatster just said, when it is a perpetual issue for Jennifer and me, issues of timeliness, issues of deciding things versus discovering things, issues of the emotional side of things versus the rational side, naming them with a frame. Okay, hey, I'm going to talk about a perpetual issue, so we're probably not going to immediately agree on it, but I'd like you to just hear my standpoint on it, and I'll listen to yours. So merely framing it as a potentially perpetual issue on which there are values differences can help to lower the temperature in the room a little bit. So what's a frame, though, that may stay invisible? You and your partner could share that. Sometimes they're looking for a hug. Sometimes they're looking for a quick answer. Sometimes they're looking for logistics. Those are a few suggestions. The second question that I want to move into with Chat is, how could you help each other just be more aware? Meta communication is what Chat was referring to it, of whether you have framed things or whether it would help to frame things. Could you bring that into your relationship as part of the dialogue and the diacardia is, let's frame things. So what I want to do with Chat, what I want to do with you, Chat, as an amazing partner in brainstorming, you're really good at brainstorming, and you happen to be really good at emotional intelligence, which people I don't think appreciate yet. Let's brainstorm about emotional intelligence and about tricks and techniques. So I'll name one, and then you name one. So my first one, stop your partner. When they start to talk to you about something and you're not sure where they're going, just say frame, like, sweetheart, partner, boss, can you just frame this for me? Are you brainstorming right now? Or are you looking for a solution? Or do you want me to challenge you? It would just help me, if you can, to frame it. So you could have the shorthand of frame. Can you frame what you want? So there's one. Chatster, what do you have?
Another technique could be something like using a keyword or a phrase that you both agree on in advance. Maybe it's something like, hey, can we do a quick frame check? Or even a lighthearted code word that just means let's pause and figure out what kind of conversation we're having. And that way you can both have a little built-in reminder to say, oh yeah, let me just tell you if I'm looking for empathy, or if I'm looking for brainstorming, or if I just need to vent. So it can be a really simple, shared language trick that makes framing a natural part of your dialogue.
Cool. Okay. A third way that people could do it, make a frame shape with your fingers. I'm trying to do it on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, which is a good way to take this in. But you know what I'm talking about. 2Ls. Make 2Ls and just say, hey, can you frame it? Okay. Back at you, Chat. Can you think of another suggestion of how people could help each other make frames more visible?
Another thing you could do is actually set aside a specific time. Maybe you have a regular check-in where you actually talk about how you're communicating. It could be a weekly or monthly thing where you say, hey, let's talk about what's been working in our conversations and where we can use a little more framing. That way it becomes part of your relationship culture to check in on how you frame things.
Awesome. Another great idea. Here's another one related to your idea of time, where you're saying have a check-in time. I would say think about when you want to have conversations, especially important ones where you know you want feedback, encouragement, resolution of a problem, brainstorming, whatever it happens to be. I would suggest, for example, if it's a hard one, do it in the morning. Like most people are calmer in the morning. The house can be quieter in the morning. Perpetual issues and values differences, spend versus save, spend time with nuclear family or with extended family, active vacation or beach vacation. These things are going to be more charged. And so if you can do them at a time when you know your energy is calmer and better, that may really help. Chat, do you have another one?
Absolutely, Dan. And I love that tip about timing. Another idea could be to use reflective listening as a kind of framing tool. So when your partner starts talking and you're not quite sure what frame they're in, you can reflect back what you're hearing and say something like, so what I'm hearing is you'd like some support right now, or and hearing that maybe you're looking for ideas. Is that right? That gives your partner a chance to confirm or adjust the frame in real time. So reflective listening can be a nice, gentle way to bring that framing into the conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a really a good one. I mean, lots of time. The best situation is if you can frame it ahead of time, but oftentimes you're going to get into it. And so that reflective listening, to say it sounds like you're frustrated, as you said to me on the first one, by the way, is a great way to begin. Another one is just a symbol, for instance, like an hourglass or a pad of paper with a frame on it. I say an hourglass just because it helps you think about your time and listening well. Maybe it's an actual frame. I was going to bring one to this podcast and forgot to bring one. Or another one would be the frame of the two of you looking close, like looking affectionate. As kind of a reminder, like we can do this. We've done this before. A picture that you both like, a photo of the two of you, probably not something you'll do at work, but maybe with a loved one. I'll suggest just one more example and then we'll bring this to a close. Measure. What gets measured gets done. I've learned that in business. I learn it all the time. I teach it all the time with my clients. If something is important, you measure it. And for example, I've got a client right now where they have a very great individual producer, an individual contributor, but they have negative behavior with the team. It's never measured. It needs to be measured. And what I would suggest to you with respect to framing is just put some tick marks on a little piece of paper, 4 ticks and a cross, and get in the habit and just say, that was really good. We framed that conversation. That gratitude and the positivity and maybe some laughter about it, as Chat was saying, the Gottmans always emphasize, thank God we put a frame on that one, because otherwise we would have shattered the glass. Otherwise you would have thrown up on my painting. Have a little bit of fun with it. So I hope you've appreciated the show. With a quick recap, you get what you get if you don't know what you want. If you frame conversations, especially some of those perpetual issue conversations, you'll stand a much better chance of getting what your partner wants to give you, which is advice or treatment or love or affection or clarity or brainstorming or challenge that you actually want. So that's the first point. Let us know what's good for you. Let us know what works. And let me just finish by saying, man, if you can have just a decent conversation with an artificial intelligence, imagine what's possible if you start to frame things a little bit and help your partner to frame things so that you can begin to improve your ability to ask for what you really want, give them a chance to give you what you really want, get a chance to give them what they really want, rather than the frustration that we sometimes encounter. It's all about Diacardia, speaking through the heart and listening through the heart. Talk to you next month. Email me in the meantime at dan@leadingx2.com.